in spirit and prayer.
Hello, we're here today with Sister Mary Madeline Todd for a conversation about educating young women. You have an extensive background in education. You are currently the chair of the philosophy department at Mount DeSales Academy, adjunct professor for Aquinas College, and you serve on the boards of directors for St. Agnes School and the Given Institute. Let's start by giving us some background about your journey into religious life as a Dominican sister and how you began your ministry of teaching.
Thank you, Emily. For me, it began really here where I'm teaching. I attended Mount DeSales Academy, which is a wonderful school for girls, historically a boarding school run by visitation sisters. But in the 1980s, the Dominican Sisters of St. Cecilia were able to come and start teaching here. So I had the gift of witnessing every day really joyful, consecrated women who were deeply smart, wonderfully loving, really committed to Christ and his church. And that was very influential in my life and my way of thinking. For my part, I really wanted to study medicine. I really was drawn to the healing ministry of Jesus Christ. I intended to marry and have a family. But while I was a student here at Mount DeSales, I started attending the literal quiet daily morning mass and really sensed this deep interior personal call from Jesus to radically dedicate my whole life to him and to serving others in whatever way that would happen. I had seen firsthand the beauty of the Dominican way of life, a way of life that is strongly communal, deeply immersed in study and the things of the mind and teaching. And that was so appealing for me. And so I entered the convent after my first year in undergrad studies for pre-med. And then I was sent as a sister to study for many things. Actually, I got a degree for teaching, but also advanced studies in literature, philosophy, and theology. And then I went on to teach everything from kindergarten through adults. I have taught in all women's and all girls settings as well as co-ed, and really have loved this opportunity as a Dominican to unite the two ministries of Jesus Christ, really teaching unto healing. So my dream kind of came true that I am able to be in the healing ministry, but just through education, through teaching.
Thank you. German philosopher and Carmelite Edith Stein, known as Saint Teresa Benedicta of the Cross, wrote that education must aim at developing a woman's humanity, femininity, and individuality, pertaining to the enrichment of women's humanity. And in your experience, what skills and gifts are specifically needed by the educator to instruct and form young women in a learning community of all women? And what are the key differences in women's only learning environments to those in men's education?
Having both studied in both environments and taught in both environments, I can say that there is a uniqueness to an all women's environment. And I think one of the strong uniquenesses is by kind of nature, it's a little bit more a spirit of collaborative learning rather than competitive. And there's a high degree of sensitivity, both internal and external in a woman's environment, a sensitivity especially to the beautiful. And I think that instructors who work in such an environment have to be deeply aware of that. Interestingly, Edith Stein, who wrote extensively on the education of women, also taught in an all-girls high school led by Dominican sisters for 10 years. So she and I actually share that of our common background. And she wrote something that's very beautiful. She said that young women are encouraged in both natural and supernatural maturity by an education that can inspire works of effective love. And I think that that's I see that in living color, that the young women, they don't want to stop at concept. They really want to see, how does this go into action in showing my care for others? And that's a deeply feminine thing. It's not saying that it's not present in other institutions, but Stein said that in a sense, how you make that practical is that it's not only a training that involves the emotion very deeply, but intellectual clarity and energy. That's a specific phrase from her writings. And I think intellectual clarity is so important. And clarity is both that the concepts, the way we teach, We really take into account the learning needs of the girls, but also that there is a certain radiance to it, that we're applying the true and the beautiful. So what does that mean? I see that the girls respond really strongly to a dialogical style of learning, that they really appreciate narrative, that the concepts I teach, even in the philosophy classes I teach, are often embedded in the storytelling that I do, and they remember very clearly when it has that personal structure. Also, they respond really well to creative assignments. You know, if I ask them to design an artwork or film a video interview, they do a little better with that than if I only want them to remember the information. And they value the interpersonal. So the more we work interactively together, both in covering the material, but also in the assessment of it, the more we kind of foster this idea of a safe space where they can experience what I call intellectual hospitality, that they learn how to listen to one another, they learn how to exchange ideas in a way that is very safe. And then they become more and more able to build their leadership skills. You know, many studies have been done on the benefits of single-sex education, and they say both young men and young women can benefit, but they say the gains in academics and leadership qualities are more marked for young women even than for young men. And I think it has something to do with that safe space and that intellectual hospitality.
It's a beautiful concept, and it strikes me as being very important in both environments. Edith Stein emphasized women's education as embracing a feminine humanism that develops the feminine nature through the offshoots of human anthropology and philosophy, as well as art and literature. How has philosophy informed the curriculum in your high school? And are the lives and teachings of the women saints incorporated into the curriculum in any way?
As someone that is my own personal background, studying both literature and philosophy and theology, it's been really exciting to see how this program has benefited our school. I definitely think we're directly responding to the observation of Edith Stein that women need intellectual clarity, and certainly philosophy is meant to do that. In our school, the course begins with a foundational course in human dignity. The girls respond to this very deeply. Another thing that Edith Stein said in her writings is that the education of women should advance a girl's spontaneous approach to living and to the individual. And I think we spend so much time laying that foundation of our dignity, that every person has dignity and every person has the right to be treated with profound respect. And then that's followed by ethics. And I think, again, we lay that conceptual framework so that the girls have that clarity, that structure they need to think clearly, but they repeatedly say that they gain a lot from the creative projects we do. For example, in the level 1 philosophy, we do what's called the Human Dignity Portfolio, where they take cultural artifacts, things like songs, movies, advertisements, and they analyze how they do or do not reflect the full truth of human dignity. The girls love doing this. Regarding the feminine saints, we definitely at our school highlight in many ways the lives of extraordinary women, both of the past and the present. For example, in our philosophy, my ethics class I just taught, we do a virtue in action study and reporting, where they design an artwork that reflects a particular person's virtues, and many of them choose women, and many of them choose current leaders as well as saints. And they reflect, and then they report on a video report on how does that woman embody that particular virtue. I think they respond so positively to the female saints because as women, they have a special love for the embodiment of the principles we're studying, the incarnational kind of principle. So these embodied examples of dignity and virtue are hugely influential, and it dovetails with our school's theology program, which also studies the letters, for example, of John Paul II on the dignity of women, in which they also do another research project called the Icons of the Feminine Genius. So they're in a way surrounded by studies of great women who show them something of the greatness they would like to aspire to.
That seems like a wonderfully integrated curriculum that allows for learning both inside and out of the classroom. You spoke earlier about the importance of beauty in women's education. How does that specifically translate to the learning environment?
I think that beauty is what opens the mind to truth. And I think that women are particularly sensitive to that. It's interesting because we even work very hard to make the environment of our building beautiful. The chapel in our school is beautiful. And actually it's deeply integrated with the teaching. I was at one stage teaching the theology of the Marian dogmas in the church and realized that the girls were having a little bit of a hard time because maybe my approach was a little too conceptual and not enough appealing to their love of beauty. And when I took the information I wanted to present and kind of enveloped it in the great artistic tradition, the beautiful visual arts, the music that has been composed to honor Our Lady, it opened the girls' minds to the richness of the church's teaching on Mary in a very different way. So I think we can't underestimate beauty as this guide to truth. And so another example would be we can teach them any day the science of the marvel of human life. But when we discuss the beauty of someone like Mother Teresa of Calcutta, Saint Gianna Beretta Molla, Dorothy Day, Josephine Bakhita, when the young women see the beauty of, again, that embodied virtue, it lights them on fire. They really love the witness of a beautiful life. So yes, it's the physical environment. It's also the teaching environment. And it's recognizing that the deepest beauty is embodied.
I love that line, the witness of a beautiful life. You've spoken of intellectual hospitality and the pressing need to cherish the voice of women in a world that often suppresses a woman's voice and stifles women's contributions. In your context, what are the challenges young women undergo and how are they helped?
I have to say that this idea of cherishing the voice of woman came to me through a dialogue with the co-director of my own doctoral dissertation, a priest who really lives what he talks. And we were discussing, while we were going over my own ideas, how women live the priestly, prophetic, and kingly missions of Jesus Christ. And he said to me specifically in this dialogue in Rome, he said, men need to cherish the voice of women if the kingly mission of Jesus is going to take shape and really be lived in this world. And he did it. He didn't just say it. And I think that when I see my students, the young women of today, but especially at the university and the high school levels, they are deeply sensitive to equality, dignity, human rights. I think this generation, more than any I've seen, they are really on board with how important this is. But I think that they see that any kind of hostility in that approach is not helpful because they've benefited from the fruitful aspects of the women's movement. They have access to education, they have access to voting rights. They're not really militant in their stance about the relation of men and women, but we all know we need to go beyond tokenism and to real cherishing. When I read the female doctors of the church, their style, their approach to expressing themselves is very different. And I think we need to learn how to welcome, and young women are very good at this, welcome different styles of communicating and try to discover the real meaning of what the other person is conveying. If we have these preconceived notions that if you don't say it in this way, in this order, I'm not going to hear you, we're never going to be able to communicate, men or women, and not men and women together. So I think there's still a really long way to go towards real mutual respect between men and women. But I think that young people today, both men and women, see that aggression on either side makes this very difficult. So if we're forming our students in this intellectual hospitality, they're going to carry that into their conversations. And someone has to start with being dignified and respectful in their response. So I think that our all-girls women's educational environment gives the young women a place to cultivate confidence in a supportive environment, which an all-girls education is preeminently able to provide, so that they can gain the skill set, the confidence to express their thoughts clearly, respectfully, and really open up that dialogue with the men that they're going to share their lives with.
And lastly, I'm fascinated by your work with the Given Institute. I did some reading into the mission of this institute. It's a ministry dedicated to recognizing and appreciating the natural gifts of young adult women in service to the Catholic Church and world. Speaking to your experience with this ministry and its fruits, what do you see as the opportunity for young women regarding vocation and the renewal that is needed in the church today?
I think women today have so many opportunities to discover and share their gifts. And Given is a unique combination of offering formation and mentoring in both the spiritual growth of women and their vocational and professional lives. I've heard many of the participants in our forum say this. They said, I've gone to workshops that help me with my prayer life or retreats. I've gone to professional formation, but Given uniquely brings the two together, helps women to realize that our spirituality is not some esoteric vague thing. I mean, the way we pray, the way we think, the way we interact, and our professional lives are deeply integrated. So I think the whole structure of the Given Institute is to honor that union of, I am the person I am. I've been given the gifts I've been given because I have a mission in this world. So we host an annual forum that includes women in every vocational state as both speakers to present in a formative way and mentors, not only in the time of the forum, but in an ongoing way for the young women who participate. I think all people need to rediscover, in a culture that is so materialistic and functionalistic, that God has blessed us with gifts that are unto our own flourishing. And, when Edith Stein wrote about education, she often said, we have to remember it's both natural and supernatural, that God has a plan for our lives and he's given us the gifts of nature and grace so that we can discover and live that plan. So I think that we need to encourage women to really pray, help them to learn in our busy, loud world how to seek the silence and the interior freedom to discern God's love for them and recognize that he does have a plan. And I think that the Given Forum is preeminently, again, a space where we can give these women opportunities to ask their real questions to women from all different backgrounds and walks of life. And they can see, again, that witness of women who are living very fruitful lives. And I think that at the heart of Given, at the heart of the Catholic school where I serve, at the heart of the school on which I serve as a member of the board of directors, we're trying to help foster an environment where everyone can see that every calling, which every one of us is called by God, every one of us has a vocation, is ultimately about life-giving love, receiving God's love for us, and then paying that love forward to those around us. And that's very specific and very concrete. And I think the more we can awaken any person to their God-given vocation, the more we're going to be able to live that life-giving love in a way that's fruitful for our world.
Thank you very much, Sister Mary Madeline. It's just a joy to be with you, and you always leave so much for further reflection. So I'll be thinking deeply about our conversation today, and many of the aspects of what we spoke about today is desperately needed for our world and the renewal of our church. And for our viewers, you can certainly check out more about the Given Institute in the link that's provided. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. God bless.
Bye.